Welcome everyone. If you could please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everyone for coming to this regularly scheduled board meeting of the South Tahoe PUD. Do we have any comments from the audience at this time on non-agenda items? I only see familiar faces, so I'm going to guess no on that. So let's move on to the agenda and consent calendar. Do you have any corrections? I'm not seeing a lot of those, so let's get a motion.
I move that we adopt the consent. Excuse me. I move that we adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
It's right in front of you, Dwayne.
Oh, later that same day.
You working today, Jim?
Yeah, they gave me a new one.
Oh, good.
The other one's defective.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it after the last meeting.
Oh, now mine's not new. I don't think I hit save though.
Did you put all new ones in?
We did.
It does look like a new screen. Okay. You just blew your budget for the year. And that passed 4-0.
I'm still.
Okay. All right. This one, Jeff. Are you going to do this one? Is Jeff here? He is here. How you doing, Jeff?
Noon. This item relates to the annual renewal of our contract. We rebid the hypochlorite contract, which is the disinfectant that the treatment plant uses, and we got two responsive bidders. Basically, it's the same two we always get, and they were fairly close to each other. The winning bid is actually an increase of about 26% over the past year, and we had some information leading up to this that there would be increases. The representative attended the bid opening and gave us some information regarding the justification for those cost increases, which were basically the raw materials, transportation, competing industries, which is namely the oil refining industry. So they gave us some information, and we're recommending that we accept the responsive bidder, Olin Chemical Company, which is our current supplier, and we recommend that we accept the price and approve the contract.
Okay, any questions? I think we all noticed that big jump in price, and I seriously doubt if transportation was a significant part of it, but it sounds like supply and demand, a lot of competition for
the raw materials,
and in terms of raw materials.
There apparently are some issues with transportation relating not only to the cost of fuel, but driver issues. And coincidentally, we also met with another chemical company because we're preparing to make a recommendation for another chemical, and we heard basically the same information from the two, and coincidentally it was on the same day. So the information is the same whether they have their spiels together or whatever, but they're saying the same thing.
They all got together and huddled up, right?
Yeah, not unlike the oil companies.
Any question about future costs? I mean, with the embargoes and tariffs that are coming down, are they anticipating any?
Well, those are in the information we got from them. For instance, these chemicals and the raw materials for this chemical is used in the manufacture of aluminum, and aluminum is one of the issues that they're having the heavy tariffs for steel and aluminum. So if more were manufactured in our country, it's likely that there would be more demand for these materials, and so more competition. And then the other thing is the industrial sector in general compared to municipal seems to be, those are the two that are competing, and there seems to be a preference to supply them because they basically just pass those costs along. In the case of the oil industry, that we all see what's happening at the gas pumps. So, they're still supplying us, but we have these drivers. Of course, they said if changes in the economy, changes in the drivers happen, so the cost of oil and things like that drop, that we should see reductions. And we bid it every year, so we'll know. And luckily, we have a competitive climate. At least we have two competing companies. And a future agenda item, I think, will relate to the other contract we do on the for the water system, the smaller volume from Thatcher, and that's the other one that bids against Olin. So
What's that?
Thatcher Chemical, it used to be Sierra Chemical. So I think we're getting ready to propose for the water side a contract extension for those guys. But anyway, you know, if things change, they could drop, but I don't really anticipate that. And we kind of had some advance notice that the increases were coming. So we basically don't have much choice. This is our disinfectant. It's the cheapest way to disinfect. And luckily, we do have a couple of people that still compete. They were within a couple % of each other in their bids. So that gives a little credibility to the market.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Okay. I move that we award the bid to the lowest responsible bidder, Olin Corp., in the amount of $100,724.70.
I'll second that.
Okay, once again, 4-0. Thanks.
Thank you.
Payment of claims.
I move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $1,196,668.32.
That's such a big number, you scared them off.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna second it.
I'll second it. Wayne's being stubborn. Yeah.
Just like that, 4-0 for 1.1 million. Yeah. Yeah, it is that time of year. Lots of stuff going on. Okay, standing and ad hoc committee reports. This is the first board meeting since we had the meeting with the city, isn't it?
Yes, we had the meeting with the city on the 9th. That was after the first board meeting in
Right.
June.
And yeah, Jim and I and Richard are there, along with the folks from Lahontan and the new interim city manager and Wendy David. Yeah. So, Richard, why don't you kind of go through the more technical parts of it that we discussed?
Well,
I'm sure you have a better recall of it than I do.
well, the Patty Koimogen, Scott Ferguson, and one other gentleman whose name I can't remember at the moment, were there basically to talk about their process, and really it was pretty specific. It was to basically assure us that their approach of to the South Y PC investigation being conducted by the RP was going to move along under their direction, and this iterative, and what was defined as this iterative approach, where they would tell them to go out and do the first row of sampling, get the results back. Lahan would review the results, and then tell the RP where to go next, because they're supposed to be moving out. The concept is they're moving out from the site all the way out till they well define the plume till they get to the end of the plume, and so they were going to have this repetitious, test, sample.
Not only horizontally, but vertically.
Yes, horizontally and
And
vertically.
in the meanwhile, it moves.
Well, it depends on how fast you move from sampling, from drilling, sampling, testing, giving the order, and so
That's true.
if it's moving at, who's in the audience, if it moves at the Lahontan pace of things, you're right.
We'll never catch up with it.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
never catch up to the end of the plume. And we're all laughing, but it's sad but true. But they were, they were assuring us that this is going to move along, and when when we questioned them, when they said that when they give the RP the order that they're going to, I said, well, what if they don't do it? Well, no, we're going to order them to do the work. And so they basically said, watch us, you'll see it happening. Well, as of yesterday, they still haven't issued the RP, the work plan. They were on the phone apologizing to Evo just the other day about it's taking them extra time, and they're looking at the data, the existing data, and there's data gaps, and it's like you're hearing the same old song. So the only good news in my view of this situation is that the city has agreed that the second public hearing being conducted under the auspices of the grant project that we have going in terms of evaluating and determining, doing a study to determine where we can pump out of the ground and kind of cut off the plume, and that's going to be August 1st at the City Council chambers again, because the Lake Valley Elementary School multipurpose room is under construction over the summer, so it's not available. So the city just the other day has agreed that we can use their facilities, and they're going to live stream it again, because there were about 30 people who viewed it from home at the last meeting we had, along with 50 people in the chamber. So all that's happening. But Lahan had already asked us, a couple weeks ago, to be a presenter and a speaker along with the water companies, not just a responder on the panel answering the questions from the audience. So that they wanted to they were going to demonstrate and present the progress they were making on the cleanup and on the RP's work plan. So they've requested it. They're on the spot. We're going to put them on the agenda, and I think it's basically why we had the meeting with the city in the first place, is to put the public's pressure on them to get something done.
You think we should be up in there? I mean, when we spoke last time, as well as you spoke, and it was excellent, and our excellent representative did a good job, but they still looked at us, and so I wonder if we should be up there taking the heat.
Well, what I also shared with them at that meeting was the question that came into us when we took the questions by postcard, and after the meeting was over and we were breaking down, a member of the public sort of ran up and kind of tossed another card under the pile, and I explained what that was. That was the 2018 date with the 1989 below it, with a line drawn 28 years question mark. I told Han, I said, they were getting that question at the next meeting.
He tipped them off so they could prepare for it.
Well,
I said, but that question's probably going to come, and we expect you guys to answer it.
Yeah, I just want to be careful.
I mean, we can answer what we've
don't
done.
appear to be the people that they should be shooting.
Dwayne, I'm glad we had that meeting. I thought it was productive. I learned a lot of things on where they were going. I still felt they were kind of there to kind of play, I felt like they were telling us what we thought, what we wanted to hear, not what was really going on. I thought sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, this is almost preemptively apologizing or saying, no, this isn't the problem or whatever. And I walked out, and Dirk and Wendy, and we all had the same impression. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah.
And for my 2 cents, it was just a whole bunch of bureaucratic jargon.
Boy, that's the other thing. How do you learn to speak that way? I mean, the sentence structure was incredible.
Scott, whatever his name is, has been there for 30 years, so he's learned. But all I heard was bureaucratic excuses for why they've been delayed and they're not moving ahead and things like that. I didn't hear any words about how they could short circuit and get through the process.
Other than follow the process that's already out there. You're exactly right, Jim. Yeah.
Well, when we had,
and they've known about it for more than 28 years. They knew about it in the mid-'70s.
When we had Senator Feinstein and Congressman Doolittle come back to talk about the fire dangers of not thinning stream environment zone because it wicks through communities, the people from Lahontan were sitting behind me. And Senator Feinstein, I thought, did an amazing job of just laying it out. She says, you, Rochelle Nason, you, and she named Harold Singer and others, you get out of the way or you will be responsible for this town burning down. And they showed a film of it happening. This was 2004.
I was at that meeting when she, got on Rochelle Nason.
It was wonderful. And the people behind me from Mott said, we're just going to hunker down and get through this.
Oh, that's what they've always done. You
And
don't know.
so, I guess a lot of them, they're about ready to retire and just hunker down. But why? Do your job. But I just don't want us to be painted with the same brush. They want us standing up there taking some of the bullets. I'm not so sure. So we might want to tailor our presentation so that we don't get painted with the same brush.
That we're
Does
not.
it mean that we're not going to still do our test, or are we?
Yeah, no, we're gonna proceed ahead with our grant project where we've actually gotten a modification based upon the initial drilling. We're gonna do 2 nested wells, so we have two pumping wells, one shallow and one deep, but the contamination levels are different and the soil characteristics are different. So the shallow one's gonna be a low pumping rate and the deep one's gonna be a much higher pumping rate. And we're going to then monitor the wells around it to see if that's one of the right places to maybe pump the contamination out of the ground and contain the spreading of the plume. So that's our task, and we're proceeding ahead with that. The drilling of those wells is going to start within about a week, and so my theory, and I staff has talked about it, is I think what's eventually going to happen is Lahan's staff is going to turn to the water companies, us, and our partners, and basically try to get us to clean the plume up.
Give us some money in.
And that's the trick, is right now the grant programs are such that what we're doing is we're under a 50% match grant, and if they are going to throw the towel in with the RPs and ask us to do it, we're there to eliminate that match.
Or match the match for us.
And the question is, can we say no?
Well, we don't have to take out a grant. I mean, Lubin's has got a $2 million, because they're a small disadvantaged community, they've got a $2 million grant in, and they think they're going to get that to build a PCE treatment system for their well number 5.
But if Lucan said, if Lahan says, we want you to clean this up, we have to accept the responsibility, because the liability is huge.
Or the groundwater agency for this area. I don't know legally where we stand.
My reaction is, well, are they going to hold a gun to our heads and force us to take this grant? But it's like,
Put your microphone over. I don't know the answer.
Without getting into too many details, I don't think, right at this point, the district has not been identified as a PRP or an RP, so the district is not be determined responsible in any way for the contamination initial or the spread of it. Unfortunately, because nothing's being done, I think maybe one way to paint the picture at this meeting is, the district has stepped up because it's been adversely impacted by this, and it's proactively trying to address the contamination, because it impacts the district in having to supply water to the other water purveyors.
Being a groundwater management agency, are we liable in any way there?
Well, I think I think we need to be, and I don't want to talk too much in open session about this, but I think we need to be careful on what the district does in the field and how that impacts or doesn't impact the flow. That might be something we want to talk more detail later on. Not in this meeting because it's not agendized. The other comment I wanted to make was about the lack of movement by the regional board. They've gone through, as you know, a couple iterations. The RPs have submitted work plans. They haven't been satisfactory. They submitted another one that wasn't satisfactory. And what Lahan said, they didn't want to go through that process again and get a work plan that wasn't satisfactory. So coming out, that meeting that was, almost 2 months ago, where the water purveyors sat down with the regional board, was discussing a lot of the issues and why things aren't moving forward. And what the regional board said they were going to do is, rather than requiring another revised work plan, they will accept the most recent work plan, but with conditions. And a lot of those conditions were discussed at that meeting. And then after that, all the water purveyors put together a whole list of those conditions in writing and submitted them to the regional board. Our thought was the regional board was going to take those rather quickly, attach them to the most recent work plan and issue it to the RPs and say, this is what you got to do. And unfortunately, nothing's happened. I know Eva and I have talked, and he's followed up some with the regional board, but we're not getting any movement. Even after that, I won't say promise, but indication is how they were going to approach this. And it continues to languish.
That's why I said I got the impression that they were just telling us what they thought we wanted to hear, and then just leave the meeting and go on their merry way with the same pace and emphasis. I mean, this was my impression.
I think the idea is for us to go cautiously and make sure we don't end up in the bullseye. We don't deserve it, and we've done our best to push them along.
Wrong.
One thing about Dwayne, your question earlier about the meeting, about whether we should be hosting this meeting and be up there on the podium. The grant requirements were that we have one public hearing or public meeting about this topic, about this grant, and we committed to the grant agency as well as to the community in our first public meeting that we were going to have a second meeting. So I think we've got to be up there at the table and hosting this and pushing this forward.
I don't think that means we can't lay it right out that we don't have any issues with our system or our wells, but we care about the groundwater in the basin. That's why we're there.
And that was, I think, the message that Richard conveyed at the last meeting pretty effectively was just that.
Now, I wish the public heard that as well as it was presented, because I had people call me and grab me out the hall. So do I have to use a water thing, a purifier, and are my kids going to get sick, and not somebody's pregnant, and are they going to have to move, and it was just crazy.
Well, if you remember, that's what we got. That's what went on when we had the MTV situation.
Yeah,
People were calling up asking if they could eat the tomatoes out of their backyard. This is the MTV contamination. It's just
They were calling the Chamber of Commerce to ask if they needed to bring their own water up from the bay.
I was at the chamber, so I know.
Yeah, it's a daunting task to get enough information out to the public in such a form that they can digest it, and enough people hear it and understand it and kind of help spread the word.
What you guys are saying is the right thing to do to move this along. And what we're saying is, yes, just be careful. That don't be afraid to point a finger.
Right. And
for your case, pound the table.
And we're also cognizant of what potentially can happen if we basically kind of punched Lawton in the nose. We've been there, done that, win battle, lose the war kind of stuff. So
I know.
we're walking a kind of a fine line in terms of how hard we come down on the staff there.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the way Randy put it, though. I think that was well put.
Well, we can draw a very clear picture of how responsive we were to the PCE problem when it was identified. We had a stripping tower built and connecting water lines to it from all the small wells we had in the area within a couple of years. And then and those wells, we suspended using them and we put them back online after we had the stripping tower, so we continue to use them and feed water that met drinking water standards to the customers in the area. We didn't abandon those wells until the MTB plume and contamination hit the same area. And then we said, well, okay, this is over the top. And then we got the oil companies to pay us to drill new wells and move away from that area.
People want to know, where is it, and is it affecting me?
Yeah.
And who's going to tell you that? Okay.
I guess to be continued, right?
Yes, and so as I said, the meeting is August 1st, again at the council chambers, 5:30 to 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So, I wanted to talk about the ad hoc committee for the Alpine County contract, and just in terms of, we have a closed session item, so the details Gary has some information for you about the nuts and bolts and kind of the topic, but I just wanted to talk an open session about the schedule, trying to schedule a meeting with Alpine County's 2 supervisors. We did get Chris's schedule. Melanie got it, and he's going to be gone for the 2 meetings in July. So unless we want to tell Alpine County we want to put off until August a meeting, we need to consider having one of you substitute for Chris on the on that committee if we want to offer a meeting, try to arrange for a meeting in July. So I put that question out there for you guys to consider.
I talked to Chris a couple of days ago. He thinks he's going to be back on the 20th of July. And he does want to be involved with this and was hoping that the meeting could happen after that. But I understand if they don't want to wait that long, it's up to, I guess, the rest of us if we want to do it.
Well, we've had a
wait or not.
We had a reprieve because Carol, their CAO, was on vacation for a couple of weeks, and the attorney said, "Man, we don't want to try to schedule anything while she's gone." Well, she's back from vacation now, and the supervisors got a little bit of heat on Tuesday at the Alpine County Commission meeting from the public saying, "Well, we guys need to get along and move this thing," because they were coming up with a recommendation to the supervisors to ask for more money on the mitigation fee, and the members of the public were saying it was taking too long to initiate discussions. So they're feeling some heat from the public. So, but again, it's up to us in terms of.
Think about that, though. The reason they're feeling heat from the public is the public wants them to get more money from us. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, well, and that's what we're going to talk about in closed session. So, so if we want to stay with Chris on the committee, what we can do is look at as we talked about, either the afternoon before or the morning after the board meetings, and so August 2nd and August 16th are 2 board meetings in August. Can I offer, like I say, Wednesday afternoon or Friday morning on August 1st and Friday the 3rd, and then the 15th and 17th?
Yeah, why don't you?
August 1st is probably fine. Right in there. My doctor, they're having a baby, and he'll be gone till the end of July. So I won't get a surgery probably till middle of August, I'm thinking. So I think I could do the 1st of August. That looks pretty good. We can't do the end of July because Chris is gone and somebody goes to Washington. We won't have enough people for a board meeting.
Well, the board meetings in July are on the 5th and the 19th. So we were talking about the Washington, D.C. trip the next week. But what we were trying to do, if you remember, we were trying to schedule around a board meeting because Gary's already up here for a board meeting, so he has to make a special trip to Tahoe.
That makes sense.
The non-board meeting week.
So I'm pretty sure I can do it the first part of August.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll offer the afternoon of the 1st or the morning of the 3rd. Or do you think can I offer the morning of the board meeting? Like a 9 o'clock meeting? Like 9 o'clock or something at Alpine? Well, why don't I do that too? Okay. So we're basically offering 3 dates, the 1st, 2nd, or the 3rd. Right, for now. Okay.
Yeah. It sounds like Chris will be back then.
Yeah, he'll be back, so.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other standing or ad hoc?
You should have gotten a copy of the Operations Committee minutes. A couple of things that I thought were kind of interesting were Jessica Henderson was there, talked about the changeover for the connections, in those areas where the water lines were going down the back. Now to the street, they're moving ahead on that. And we may, because of the bids that came in, we may wind up just have the district do it, and rather than 22 different contractors or whatever out there, and Shelley's been involved with it. I don't know if you want to say anything, but they're moving ahead on that. And then Jessica also talked about the water smart towers and how that's moving ahead with their program. And then we had some long discussions about the sewer collection system study and the water system, distribution system study that are going on. A lot of doom and gloom there, but one thing that's happening with the new truck that we got, the TV truck, they were apparently a little slow on getting going and, had some problems or just delays, figuring out how to use the system. But now they've caught up and are doing quite a bit to the point where they're generating more data than they can analyze. And there's a discussion about hiring a consultant to come in and do that. It sounded like it's going to be pretty cheap. Was it $7,000?
$6,000 in fact. Well, we figure, considering a fully kind of burden rate for the employee who has been doing the coding of the data as you run the TV camera down and you come back and you run that video and you can look at what all the effects in that pipe are, and we figure that it's roughly half the cost to have this firm do that, sit down in front of that video and actually identify and code all of the deficiencies and then they are staffing. So I have initiated a purchase order with that company to go ahead and start. Still need to do some checking. We'll need to validate the quality of the work that they do, but we may have some pretty good reputation. So we're pursuing that as we're getting $6,000.
The guy that we're hiring worked for the company that provided the TV system, so he's aware of that. Looks like we're moving ahead quickly now that they're getting out there in summertime and
That's good.
really
Good to
getting a
hear.
lot of miles of line.
What we need.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need to feed the Prop 218 process.
Yes, we need to get as much as of a representative sample we can get within the next year. Okay. That probably does it for standing and ad hoc committees, I would guess, right? Okay, how about board member reports?
Just two quick things. One, we made the JPIA front page of their booklet there, and because it says we're new members, but we've actually been a member, but we're including a couple of more areas that we're being insured on. We made the front page there, and then yesterday I attended the ECC meeting, which was I think a good meeting, and there were in the excess of 50 people, maybe 60.
Wow.
Which is pretty good.
Must have been a good breakfast.
Yeah, it must have been bacon and stuff.
No, it was eggs Benedict and not quite, but it was good. It's always a good breakfast. But I was going to make one point. There were some good discussions there. One of them was about the personnel issue that was, we were told about a couple of weeks ago. And
that is a closed session item for us to further talk about.
Anyway, there was, I think, a good discussion there, so that everybody, all the employees were getting the information they needed. And we're moving ahead there.
You mentioned the Aqua. We were also in the Aqua News pamphlet. Center, is that the center page?
Aqua News on the center article, the title is "Nothing Goes to Waste. I sent an electronic copy that
There you go.
copied them out.
Yeah, we have it.
Just give the center page on that.
That's good.
Oh, you guys.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah.
But I also
Really
forwarded
good.
it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to point out.
I'm amazed when I go to these conferences how few people, they're always surprised when they hear that we recycle everything. No one else does that.
Well,
It's amazing.
That's what Shelley said in the article. Because there's very few plants that recycle everything.
And even
That's
use
very nice.
the water to generate electricity. That's really green.
Yeah, there you go. So
And
let's
we're not done
let's
yet.
get this to the local media.
Half the pipe's good, so we'll just.
Not a bad
turn it
idea.
over.
Okay.
Okay, I have a short report. did any of you get phone calls regarding the 55 gallons a day? Talking to you about it. It was in.
I just chatter. That's all.
Yeah. People are really interested in that.
But they don't understand. They think that they're going to be metered to 55 gallons. And there was articles in the news media. Do I do my laundry or do I take a shower? You know, just irresponsible stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
Can I do both? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I can see why they had everybody put in the meters so that they could start doing this kind of stuff. But it's a little tight. 55 gallons. They got no business doing it. So people are going to start drilling wells like crazy.
But remember, that's indoor use.
Yes.
And then they're going to estimate outdoor use based on aerial photography, which isn't going to work. So,
it's a nightmare, but you can be sure that we'll be tasked with it. And then
Well, what's going to happen? It's not really an individual mandate. It's basically
It's a
to create a water budget for the utility district. So you have 14,000 customers and an estimate of the population, estimate of the irrigation area. So we're handed a maximum amount of water that we can deliver per day, and we get in hot water if we go over that.
well, it's impossible because we have people that drive through that are just on the highway that aren't really counted as part of the tourism, but they stop and use the bathroom, they buy goods and.
I think the good news is Shannon and Aqua has negotiated and got some negotiating room, and estimating of how to calculate those types of things, how to calculate the outdoor
Got a
water,
tourism
how to calculate,
Yeah.
Our expectation will have to be engaged in how the regulations actually get pulled out. Our expectation is though that we're gonna pull out that commercial, industrial, institutional budget portion of the budget. That's going to be separate, and so those tourists, our goal and focus will be to capture those tourist visits as part of that use.
Right.
And that's a separate budget, which are based on estimates and is really kind of hand wavy, and we'll be engaging on how those are developed. But that will be our goal, is to pull that out so that we can account for those tourists and the second homeowners, things of that nature. We'll try to account for them separately and not have that count against the 33,000 residents and their 55 gallons per capita per day. We don't want those the tourist allocation to count towards that.
Unless they do it by housing unit or, I don't know, in some way they'll get it. Incredible. And the other thing is I met for a couple hours with Nick Exline last night just to get to know him. And he had asked to meet with my wife and I, and it was very interesting. We just briefly talked about the project, what is it called?
At the chateaus?
Yeah, the chateau. We just briefly talked about it. He said that they felt like they were being held hostage. He listens to our things, I guess, online. So hi, Nick. But he said that they felt like they were being held hostage by that board because they know that they can't get access to the beach unless they use their water. So I mentioned a couple of things about my idea, and he didn't really catch with them. I'm not sure he understood what I was trying to say. That was that.
Well, Paul and Shannon and I had a meeting with him, and basically the message we said was that we went back to and they were aware of the 80-20 split water service in that area. Mm-hmm. And we basically gave them the message that we certainly believe that our board would be amenable to, if we accomplish an 80-20 split, we wouldn't care where the 20% was delivered to. So that if they come up with a proposal that, that we supply the rest of the commercial or, something like that they could provide the water to the residential units that are proposed to be built above the existing commercial, and therefore have them obtain their beach passes. And so we said, so when we left the meeting, we thought the meeting went well, because then they said they were going to go talk to Lakeside Mutual's board and talk about the fact that we were amenable to come into an agreement to an 80-20 split, which, if you remember, that was the message. Oh, that was our agreement. That was the message the whole time when we were having those discussions with them. And they were the ones who wanted us to sign an agreement saying we were going to provide the water service to those 6 parcels in the front the commercial frontage and anything was above them, and that was all we were going to get. That's what they wanted us to agree to, and we told, Nick and Gary Midkiff, which was his boss, that, and we said, that's what they wanted us. They wanted us to sign an agreement. We wouldn't, because we wanted to go back to an 80-20 split, which is about what it was pre-2007. So if they want to go back to that, we're fine. We're certainly open to listening and talking about that and accomplishing that, so that the beach passes can be given to the the residential unit occupants.
Yeah, so we didn't talk about it very much. It was just, and he did say he met with you guys, but he it felt like he was still at logger jams with the Lakeside Board, is what I got. But I said, well, we can't help you much. He said, you know anybody over there? I know their attorney, but that's it.
Yeah.
And let's see what else. I think that was about it. As you know, Susie Alessi stepped down. I knew that was coming. I think maybe the assistant clerk that resigned, Evelyn, is probably going to run for that office, so maybe they would want to put her in there. Sounds like that there isn't really any process for doing that, but they had so many information requests that it just snowed them under. Gather all the cell phones, go through each cell phone, and see which one was a personal call, which they're not supposed to do, which one was a business call, and which one went to who, and what did they say. It's an incredible task, and they don't really have a system like a Laserfish, I think it's called, to be able to coordinate the system. And I found out that Nancy Carey had taken over Susie's staff, and she was directing Susie's staff, which would make it impossible to do your job if you weren't the one in charge of your own staff. So that's just kind of the back page. I'm not sure how things will go. So it's a real mess.
Is the city going to consider changing the relationship there, that it's not an elected position?
Well, I know Kay Reed would like it, but I was part of the group when I was like 23, 24, that put it on the ballot to get it changed, because it was such a problem. At the time, the city council was using the city clerk to delay initiatives, to change things, and it was really a problem. So we had it made so Evelyn Roberson, when she ran for office, would be an elected clerk, so that she would be independent and be able to answer to the public. So I still think that works. What happened in this case is the elected person kind of got co-opted back into doing what those guys said, instead of being independent. Sometimes if you have the kind of tragedy somebody's had, they just lose their backbone or whatever, and I don't really blame them.
But is it too close to the election time to fill for the council to temporarily fill that position?
It would seem so, wouldn't it? I mean, it's...
I'm just, when a board member or a council member or something leaves, depending upon how far away the election is, there's a backfill, an interim backfill appointed. But if you get real close enough to the election, then that doesn't happen.
I know the county's problem is they have too many separate elected people. The county, it's an unmanageable deal. They have a bifurcated county where you have people that are close to Sacramento, then you have Georgetown way out there, Grizzly Flats way out there, Pollock Pines way up above, and that with the growers, different levels of economic and interest as to where they go to school and what they think. And then Tahoe, the largest city that gets the most money, gets almost nothing. And we're so far away that it's so bifurcated. And then if you have all the appointed people that are usually appointed, elected, the county manager can't direct anybody then. But yet they're responsible for it. That's the definition of slavery. We're being responsible without authority. It's terrible. So, but that being said, the clerk independence, especially in Susie's first part of her career, was very valuable. I'd hate to see it go the other way, even though it works really well here. But it can go the other way.
Okay. Is that it, Dwayne?
Yeah.
You've talked enough.
Yeah.
Anything, Kelly? So I think we can move on to the El Dorado County Water Agency purveyor.
So we had a meeting, we passed the budget, and I believe, did you guys make an appointment? Kim Payne's coming up?
He's coming up. He hasn't called, and it's good because Lynn's been out of town anyway. But Lynn would be an important person for him to meet because of they're changing the way they're doing things down there. Right now, we would be in a position where we'd be submitting a bunch of specific job-related, grant requests. Since right now now they've created it, particularly the groundwater issues and any hydro type issues in the priority one. That it's the process is going to be different. So he's going to come up and explain to us what that process is for us to get the money that they're planning on giving us. I certainly, from the budget numbers, I would be led to believe that it's not going to be quite as much as we asked for in our preliminary estimate. Our preliminary requests that went in, before we knew that this process was changing, because we had put in about $450,000 requests. And it doesn't look like they've got that much money at this point to give out to the water purveyors, but we'll see when he comes up here. So anyway, that's to be scheduled in the near future.
And I don't think there's a meeting in July. It might be tentatively, there might not be a meeting, and then the August meeting's here.
All right. Well, good. I guess we're moving on to you then, Richard.
Yeah, I have a bunch of quick small items. Paul and I were able to make a presentation to the TRCD board that Shelley sits on, and we thought it was a good exchange of information. We talked about our upcoming Prop 218 process and try to get people to understand, the nature of the water and sewer service and the upcoming expenses, and encouragement for them and the people they knew to attend some of the upcoming public meetings that we'd be talking about, the future of the district and its water and sewer systems. So, and on my way out of that meeting, on my way out of the workforce housing meeting, which I want to talk about in a minute, the Rotary Club grabbed me and said that they'd be calling us to schedule a meeting in the near future for us to go over, make a presentation to them.
Who did you talk to?
What's that? Yeah, that was, I can't remember, it was a real young guy.
Nick?
Yeah, I think it's Nick,
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, he said, we'll expect a call, so. Yeah. And then I attended a workforce housing policy subcommittee meeting this week, and just as a point of information, they're expecting us to start working on our ordinance to bring back the sewer transfer fee issue that we used to allow in order to basically incentivize low-income housing. And so they were proposing, what was proposed was us take a look at the definition that the city has for what workforce housing is in terms of income levels, and potentially see if we could use that as part of our ordinance to define what workforce housing is, so therefore what projects we would consider people being able to transfer their existing sewer units into to try to save some upfront costs. So that's just a kind of a quick update in where we are. And I think that there's a lot of things that are in process by the various agencies, and so I think Dwayne's idea that we'd be looked at as an example of an agency that was trying to make things happen, I think has been effective. Just a couple other quick items. The final EIR for the golf course reconfiguration project, where they're expanding 4 or 5 holes to the west side of the Upper Truckee River, is out for comment. Looking at the approximate layout, looks like we have a sewer line and a sewer easement coming across the old Amico Ranch area right through the expanded area of the golf course. So I think we should need to send in a letter by the end of July, basically just pointing that fact out, and that we would need continued access. We don't want to bury the manholes or plant them in the middle of a green and then not expect us to, trample the green down while we're accessing those manholes. So
Where was
It'd
that?
make putting kind of hard too.
That was at the golf course. Okay.
Well, Cuz is suggesting if they place the manhole right, if he hit it with his ball, maybe it would bounce further closer to the hole. But it's
Recess the manhole and just have an extra large cup. Make it easier for me.
so anyway, that's coming up, and then on July 20th we're having a meeting of the A3 customer group for Liberty Utilities to talk about their upcoming or their rate increase that's in front of the CPUC, and a meeting with our consultants that are basically kind of analyzing that and making sure that the usual subsidization of the residential rate by the A3 group is brought down to a minimum. So we'll be here in this room on July 20th in the morning talking about that. I think that's it for that. Just the next item was just information again, looking at the overall process of the GM recruitment. We will have the necessity to have an ad hoc committee, but there'll be things like talking about questions for the interview itself that don't qualify to be talked about in closed session. And so think about who, if it's other than the executive committee.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll put this to you guys. My thought was the executive committee.
Yeah, okay.
Does that work for you, Kelly?
Yeah.
Unless you guys have
I
an
think that's
objection
kind
to
of what
that.
the executive committee's for. It's a lot of work in the summer for you, Kelly, but I think that should be.
We'll
what it is.
just meet at Steamers.
Yeah, makes sense.
Taco night.
Yes.
Those are good.
Okay, so that I'll let Nancy know that.
And so she can just send us an email when
Yeah.
she wants to schedule one of those
Yes.
meetings or whatever. And
Sure.
we'll schedule it to when it fits into both of our schedules.
Okay. Water, I know we have a water conservation program. Making sure we covered everything. Is there anything else, any other reports that we want to make? Okay.
Streetlights. I thought we were going to get Tim to talk about this.
I was going to say, how come I'm doing this? But we did get a chance to have a second meeting with Liberty. If you recall, I think when we reported after the first meeting, it appeared the most likely path for the district to get out of billing for streetlights was for the city to begin receiving the bills from Liberty for those streetlights. So between the first meeting and the second meeting, there had been communications between the city and Liberty. And the city ended up responding back to Liberty stating that they weren't interested in taking over the billing unless Liberty was to retrofit all the streetlights to LED and also come up with a new rate, an LED rate. And I put an email actually in front of each one of your desks, computers there, and it's from Liberty, and they have committed to doing both of those things. It's going to take some time, though, especially adopting the rate that has to be approved by the CPUC, and it takes several months, I guess, for that process to take place. Originally, when we sent the letter to Liberty stating that we were getting out of the streetlight billing business, we stated that the end of this month was going to be the cutoff. When we met the first time, we said that if it appeared progress was being made, we believed that you, our board, would most likely be willing to extend that timeline. And based on the commitment that we have received here, we're hoping that you will consider that. So do they.
Does it have to be
Today.
agendized?
No, I don't think it does. I'm not really interested in extending the deadline because I think that that tends to get abused, but I will go with what the rest of the board thinks.
And what we can do is provide you with progress reports as the rate process goes through.
I mean, we've been doing this for how many years?
How many decades?
How many? That's what I mean, 30-something? 40?
At least.
Okay. So there's no way I could put up with another week.
One way we could do it is tell them, the city, it's the city, right, that'll take it. See, the city can do it based on them promising. Let them take it based on the promise. I'm okay if we put a new deadline. I mean, what's...
Right, yeah, don't leave it open-ended.
Yeah.
All joking aside, Paul, I think that it's good. This letter shows that it's moving in the right direction, so I continue working with them, but also let them know that we really aren't interested in continuing this any longer than we have to.
And we have made that loud and clear. They know they do not have that they have to complete the process at some point in the near future.
Okay. Very good.
Well, as Shelley's, you have this? Oh, okay, I was
And,
gonna,
and,
oh, no, I was just gonna brag that.
I've got one other thing before your report.
These guys.
I think you all received an email about doing a Washington, D.C. trip. We were looking at that the week of July 23rd, and we wanted, I think the email that you received was requesting that you take a look at your calendars and see, and then discuss who would be appropriate for that meeting and who's available or interested, or do you want to go to do this visit back to Washington, D.C. The two topics that we are expecting to discuss at this point are with the delegation, so Congressman McClintock, Senators Harris and Feinstein, and those meetings pretty much would be focused on the fire partnership funding issue, continuing to push and request their support along those lines, and also in speaking with Eric Saperstein and David French and discussing our PCE issue, their recommendation is that we brief the congressional delegation on what's going on, where we're at, not necessarily that we do a hard ask that they intervene, but that we bring them up to speed with what's going on. And then one thought we've had was to ask that they send staff to that August meeting with this public hearing about the PCE issue, where LaHont is supposed to be doing some presentation. And so at this point, those are the two topics that we have planned to discuss for those congressional visits. To tell you my thoughts, again, depending on what your desires are, my thoughts would be flying out of here on Sunday the 22nd of July, having meetings on Monday the 23rd, and then flying back out on the 24th. So a quick shot out and back. Again, we're not meeting with 100 different offices. It should be fairly directed to those folks that are, I think, critically important to what we have going on right now.
Well, my thought on who should go is I probably feel we get the best bang for the buck if we send somebody who is known and has already established relationships. So I would think it would be either Jim or Dwayne. I personally was thinking Dwayne, but I don't know what you guys think.
I think it should be one of the two.
Yeah, I have it open.
So you two want to arm wrestle or something?
Rochambeau.
Rochambeau.
Weighs me.
or they can both go.
Well, that's true too. But I'm thinking, Shannon, you're very knowledgeable on all the subjects, and then to get an elected there always helps. So I don't know if two is really overkill or not.
Now, I don't know the other senator at all yet. I've met her once. And I think didn't they move the presidential summit too?
I believe it's still scheduled for August 21st, as far as I've been informed, and that's also when we're planning to have our Diamond Valley Ranch open house, which is part of what Shelley was going to talk about, is the following day.
We still have.
I'm available, but I think that everybody ought to have an opportunity to go to Washington, especially in July.
Here's what I say. I'll think about that. The summer's my absolute busiest time of the year, as I'm thinking is Kelly's too.
I can go. I'm not having surgery. Then I might walk slow, as I am apt to do right now.
We'll cart you around. I'll bring a
I get a
wheelbarrow.
lime bike. I get one of those lime things.
You know, I was actually in Washington,
Scooters.
I was in Washington DC a couple of months ago, and the Lime bikes are starting to
They're
invade.
driving me.
Then I only have the red dockable ones, but the Lime ones are invading there too.
They're in Washington DC now.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was there 2 months ago.
Oh.
And they were coming
Yeah,
in.
okay.
They're all over Europe.
It's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother story, and
I
I'm
like
not
those old
convinced.
scooters.
I'm not convinced all the little kids are riding them.
Anyway, another subject.
Another subject. Yeah. So I think I.
Okay, so Shannon, we'll just
Or plane.
keep in touch with you, and I'm assuming is the district already bought the plane tickets and stuff?
No, we haven't.
We want to get those as soon as possible for the rates.
If Dwayne, if that time frame works for you, you can get with Melanie and Marla and ask them to start coordinating that. We'll communicate it to David and Eric, and we'll get those things scheduled.
Hot back there.
It's going to be hot, no doubt. There's no getting away from
Yeah,
that.
you.
Yeah. I want an aisle seat. That's all I ask for.
Okay. We'll make it happen.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Shelley.
Isn't this nice?
Yeah, so both Richard and Shannon alluded to it. You guys should have an invitation in front of you for our 50th anniversary of the recycled water system out in Alpine. So these invitations went out today. We'd love, if you guys are around, to put this on your calendar on August 22nd. We invited a wide range of folks, almost 100. So Alpine County's board, the City of South Lake Tahoe's board, all of our partner agencies, anyone we work with in the basin, folks there, a lot of our legislators, the ranchers out there, a lot more folks as city and county staff. So anyway, we'll see how many folks turn up, but it'll be an exciting time to celebrate all the work that's been out there. And it's scheduled for the day after the Tahoe Summit, thinking that a lot of our legislators will be in town, so a lot of folks will be in town for that, so a good excuse to stay an extra day. So I wanted to just give you guys a quick update on what the water conservation program's been doing. It's been a very busy summer. As Jim mentioned about our AMI towers, so right now we have about 97.5% of our meters reading to the AMI towers. And the exciting thing...
Currently?
Currently.
How many was that?
97.5%. Are currently reading to our AMI towers, and something that's really exciting is the way we're now using that data. So in May and June, when a lot of folks are turning on their irrigation system, Jessica Henderson's been checking our WaterSmart portal for leaks, and she contacted 26 folks in May and June, and the folks that all 26 of them addressed the leaks. They were big leaks. And so by contacting them right when we found the leak, instead of at the end of the quarter, we saved over 7 million gallons of water. So that's a pretty exciting way to use that technology.
How far away are we from having it accessed by that data accessed by the client?
Yeah, so
Customer.
right now we have about, I think there's 300 folks that are already on the system. And we're planning on we hired a seasonal staff to convert those meters from reading in 100 cubic feet to 1 cubic foot this summer. He's making big progress. I think he's already done 1,000 out of the 5,000 or something. So the hope is at the end of the season, once they've all been converted, we'll do a big media push to get folks to enroll this fall. And once folks are enrolling, we'll turn on the auto alert for the leak system so that, again, we won't be contacting them. It'll automatically be contacting them if a leak is.
And there'll be a place on the website they can log on and look at what their usage is and all that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a really user-friendly portal. And I know as a homeowner, I want to be notified if I have a water leak, right? I want to know what's going on. So, so far of the 26 folks that we've reached out to about leaks, we've received really positive feedback. A lot of times you can't see it. You don't know, you can't see it. So for just an update since the end of the fiscal year. We've got, we hire a contractor to help do our WaterWise house calls. So he's done just shy of 300 this year, and that contract was for $15,000. And a really cool thing about him is that he also contracts with Liberty Utilities. So when he goes out to homes, he's getting a water conservation and an energy conservation audit all at once. So that's been a really great partnership. We've also ramped up our WaterWise landscape consultations to say, hey, our water use can almost triple, our water production can triple sometimes in the summer months, mainly due to landscape irrigation. We'll come out, we'll help you, turn on your sprinklers, walk through it. So Jen Cressy, my seasonal staff's been doing them. She's gone out to 21 houses this year so far. So that's kind of a program we're trying to remind the community that we can help them out with that. Our turf buyback program is super popular. We have over 40 folks on the list to be completed this year, including the environmental magnet school. The elementary school out in Myers has an area that they're doing, and Barton is doing a demonstration garden, so they're ripping out grass and they're a part of our program. And again, end of fiscal year, it was super productive for our clothes washer and toilet rebate are still really popular. We did 31 clothes washer rebates and 44 toilet rebates for a total of $12,000. And again, I'm not actively advertising that. It's more folks contacting us about that program. And then another cool way we're using the AMI data from all of our meters is our water educator started in June, who drives around to look for violations of the watering days. And we had her go out for 2 weeks to try it out, and then we just gave her a briefing on how to use WaterSmart to guide that effort. So it's really cool. She can say, I'm going out on Friday between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And she can look in WaterSmart for who's irrigating not on their designated days between 6 and 10 p.m., pull that data into Google Earth, and it populates a map for her. So we're...
I'm not so sure I like this.
I know.
It's like...
Two big brothers, huh?
So the thought
little bit too much information.
Right? The thought is that what I would love to do is I would love to not have to hire someone to drive around in the future.
No,
So
I get it, but it's just like where Big Brother is watching your water usage. So you better use your water on the day you're supposed to use it, or we're going to be contacting you.
What I'm interested in seeing is, if you have a drip system, it's exempt. So I want to see, is the information we're getting from the AMI towers true to what we're seeing if someone's driving around? So we'll see how that works.
Creating more ill will than we're saving water.
I mean, always the goal of the Rex used to call me an amoeba because I didn't have a backbone. The goal of our water conservation program isn't to do fines, so it's to let folks know that the goal is to conserve water. So when folks call with all sorts of excuses after the first letter, I'm very generous with our customers because that's not a revenue source for us, is the violations. We find very few people. It's more to have that stick in case.
Yeah, in the past, we've done things like out of a whole season. Remember, we generated 2 fines, and they were both on commercials. One was on Safeway, and another one was on a gas station where they basically just refused to comply with the watering schedule with no residential fines. And we were very effective in getting people to comply. So. Right.
And honestly, with meters, folks want to, they're looking at their water consumption more. And it's been April. Spring is a really big time for reaching out to all the school-age kids. We did the Science Expo at the community college in April. We're out on Zephyr Cove. Hosted all the 4th graders in town on the Tahoe Paradise boat. So out on that, talking about where our water comes from. Reached all the 6th graders out at Tahoe Mountain, where they were also planting sugar pines. We were having them think about what they do in their watershed with pollution and drinking water. We reached all the kindergarten through 2nd graders at Nevada Beach for Outdoor Explorer, and the 3rd and 4th graders for Children's Forest out at the Talac Historic Site. So if you know any child that is in elementary school, they have they've had a lot of attention from us in spring. So that's always a great outreach program. We've also done a lot of outreach with our community. We've hosted 3 workshops at the library on Tahoe-friendly landscaping. We do that in connection with master gardeners, and they've been packed houses. Every seat's filled. So that's been great. We have 2 upcoming talks at Aspen Hollow and Nell's Hardware, so trying to go to where the people are when they're thinking about landscaping. And then we worked with the master gardeners. If you've been to the library lately or are about to go to the library, just past the front door of the library, there's a currently unvegetated area, but we're working with the master gardens to make that a demo garden. So providing them assistance and tips and tricks to feature Tahoe-friendly landscaping, as well as I'm sure you've noticed the front of our office looks quite different. This fall we'll be doing some more planting, but trying to clear it out and make it more of a demonstration of what we're hoping folks can do in their yard. And finally, we talked so much about the city at this meeting, so I want to give you a few things that I've been working on the city with that are kind of feel-goody things. There's a grant through the Tahoe Sierra Irwin, the Integrated Regional Water Management Group, that came through the district that goes to the Tahoe RCD is administering for water conservation. And this $75,000+ of that grant is going to the city to help them improve their irrigation controllers. So we went to the city and said, hey, we have funding to do Tahoe RCD and South Tahoe PD. Went to the city and said, hey, we have funding to do a pilot project. What do you want to use? What could you use money for to conserve water in your system? And they said the irrigation controllers is a bit pain for them. When it rains, they have to go out and manually turn them off. When someone kicks off a sprinkler head, they don't know about it until someone complains. So anyway, they're getting a grant for over $75,000 to help improve their irrigation system. So I think that'll save them money, water, and it's a good partnership between us and the city. And also, we've alerted the city various times over the years about they have water meters that aren't being used, service lines that aren't being used. And the trick is always about getting that information in front of the right person. So we shared it with the CFO, and from a money side of things, the thought is, why are we paying all this money? Why is the city paying all this money for water service lines they're not even using? So they're working with PUS and inspections to cap lines that they're not using to save costs too. So partnerships that we're doing with the city to try to save water and money.
How many water meters is it? You can do
Is it, I would guess 15? 14
Well, that's a lot of money.
14 or 15 meters, and it ends up being, is that part the 25,000 a year? Yeah, it's like 25,000 a year just in connection fees for those 14-ish meters. And then we also gave them a list of really large meters that they don't need that capacity. So the fire districts is the prime example. And the fire chief says, yeah, we don't need that capacity. We don't need a 5-inch meter. We're not filling. They originally thought they wanted that to fill up fire engines, but they're not doing that. They fill up at our hydrants around town. So they're looking into downsizing those as well, and I think that's an additional $25,000-ish if they implemented those.
Now, one of our ex-employees said that they still were upset that we had meters on fire hydrants, and I've never heard of us having meters.
No.
Okay, just thought I'd check.
Well, if somebody sets up a temporary service for, like, for construction, yeah, then the water flows through a meter, temporary meter.
All right.
But when a fire hydrant hooks up to a fire hydrant, a fire truck, there's no meter.
Yeah, I sure didn't think so.
Yeah, and we let the Forest Service hook up too, when they're doing irrigating or fire suppression or whatnot. That'd be another part.
No, thank you. Very good.
And I told Randy when the electric car comes in, I'll just drive it right through these double
Right
doors,
through the doors.
for you guys.
And I found another charging station close by she can go use.
Yeah, the
Oh, did?
courthouse.
The courthouse has 2 of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's beginning to remind me of Diane, which is a good thing. If you've ever met her.
Okay, how we doing? Any other staff or, Gary's been awful quiet. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if that's the case, it looks like we've gone through the meat of this. You can see the past and future meetings. We have a couple of, I think is going to be quick discussion items in closed sessions. So why don't we move out of open and into closed?
We'll do it.
Nothing to report, meeting adjourned.